Kerre's Cafe. Jill Darcey is joining us now. Good morning, Jill.
Good morning, Kerre.
And you have produced a book called Parenting with the X Factor.
Indeed.
A book for those who are or have been involved in separation or divorce.
That's right.
Now, what prompted you to write this? Obviously, there are so many families now who are growing up where there are separate houses, trying to raise the kids together but apart.
That's right. Look, I've been through this journey myself personally. I've been parenting with an ex for over 10 years, and I've also been counselling and coaching many families as well that have tried to navigate their way through this journey. So it's really a combination of all of that put together so people can just have access to a positive way of doing this instead of the traditional route that is sort of the matrimony to acrimony path, and we're trying to look at a way to avoid that.
It doesn't have to be acrimonious, does it?
No, not at all. Actually, it's really not that difficult for it to not be acrimonious. It's just that people have this perception that if we can't make it in a marriage, we can't make it parenting, whereas the two are really quite different. And if approached in a constructive way, you can raise brilliant children.
What are the key factors to remember when you are going through a separation and then a divorce?
I think probably two things. The first is that with the marriage and the issues that have been in the marriage and that you have now decided to part in whatever the circumstances, you no longer have to try and resolve those issues. But if you're a parent in this situation, you do have a commitment and a responsibility to raising your children. And they are not part of that marriage separation and that marriage meltdown. They still deserve to be involved in both the mother and the father's lives. And look, I'm not speaking about those things where we come up against the really traumatic abuse cases and things like that. Which,
this is just your normal, average, day-to-day.
Because this is the majority of us. This is the majority of people that go through this are not in the abuse where they need legal intervention. The majority of us are actually great people who, for some reason or another, the marriage isn't going to work, but the children desperately want to be loved and accepted by both parents. So it's really getting parents to stop poisoning kids and to stop poisoning themselves and actually start raising these great families.
Yeah, bitterness is never helpful.
No, it's not, and it's very contagious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much should you tell the kids? How much do they need to know?
Well, I think this is a really interesting point that there is no simple answer. It is how much are they ready for? Children that are very young, they want to know that they're loved, that they're safe, and that mum and dad are okay. They don't want to understand the difficulties of the relationship and all the circumstances and why they left and all that sort of thing. When they're older and they're maybe in their teen years and they've started to live with a lot of dysfunction, they would like to know a bit more. But the way that you actually pitch that is really important because we've got there's a whole section in this book on how do you actually tell your children. You can present as a unified front, even though you are actually doing the opposite. You're going to go and live in a separate home. You can still present as being a cooperative parenting team. So I think really take the emphasis off, here's the ins and outs of why I can no longer live with your mother or your father, and turn it around to, I'm no longer living with your mother or father, but I am actually going to form a much stronger relationship with you. That's really what the kids are wanting to know, that they're okay.
Yes, they don't need to know that dad's a douchebag who's been sleeping with the secretary or that mum's a skanky drunk who's been out too often to be reliable.
Absolutely not, because look, these circumstances happen, and if they are teenagers and they've watched that happen, or if they're younger children and they've seen some really poor behaviour, there is nothing wrong with actually saying, listen, this behaviour, especially, let's say, the example of verbal abuse, which is a really common one. So if that kind of thing is being perpetuated in the home, there's nothing wrong with saying that although your dad is a great person or your mum is a great person, the way that our relationship has gone, it's not bringing the best out in each other anymore. Now, there's nothing wrong with saying these sorts of things to your children. The issue comes when it's like, he's a terrible person or she's a terrible person, and the children actually want to love that person. So they feel very torn.
And they can see flaws and forgive them. Kids are the most forgiving creatures on the planet.
kids want to love. They want to look at the good. And if you can foster that within, I think we'll have a far better chance of raising great kids, because let's face it, how they deal with this is the most important. It's not what we want them to do.
So it's Parenting with the X Factor. The author is Jill Darcey, Darcey, and it's available now. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.